Yeah, you can't do both, I guess.
Well, how was your trip, man?
It was good. It was good. Yeah, I had fun down there. Went and hung out with Eddie and Gabe, and went to the Eddie's coffee shop and all that
What's
kind
the
of
name
stuff.
of the coffee shop?
Yeah, it was a fun trip. It's a 2.0 coffee in Porterville.
So
California.
him and his wife run, right? What's
Yep.
his wife's name again? I can never remember. Angela
Patterson. Yeah, they have a coffee shop, and then right next door they have a. It's kind of like a gym. It's called Osteo Strong. It's a type of gym or fitness center. So yeah, we hung out down there, visited with Gabe. He came out from Utah for the 3 or 4 days.
You guys got some hunting in then?
Yeah, got a little hunting in. We ended up treeing 4 fox. So
nice.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Heck yeah. Well, you're getting down there a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, I go down there quite a bit. Mostly in the wintertime, we go hunt, Logan's Ranch a lot or different places down there. But this time of year, it's so hot. It's, guy goes early mornings and try to get in a little hunting when you can.
Yeah.
But it makes it tough.
Yeah, no kidding. Are you running at night too?
Yeah, but time it cools off, it's midnight,
Trust me. That's the worst.
Yeah, it's this heat makes it tough. But yeah, we try to go whenever it cools off enough to where the dogs can handle it. You know, keep them exercised and keep them tuned up.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, because we just did, but I don't know by the time this comes out how long ago, but the episode on, prep work to do with pups before taking them to the woods, like all the things that you go through, and that's just your method. But it's funny because we just launched an episode of Steve Fielder's about puppy training, and puppy training is like a big thing right now. There's a lot of training podcasts. So I think it's cool to kind of work through it as that progression, from making the transition and being ready to go to the woods and actually go into the woods. So that's kind of where I'd like to pick up on this one, is just your method on how you go through. And obviously each dog is different, but I'm sure you've got some tips and tricks that you've picked up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So let's say for first hunt, we kind of left it at that. The dog knew how to load. It was comfortable with the box, taken for rides, not getting car sick. We went through that, but this is go time and you're headed to the woods with that pup for the first time. What's going through your head?
Okay, the first thing I like to do is I like to evaluate the pup, which you kind of should already know this by the time you really start hunting the dog. But I like to see if the dog is the type of dog that's natural strike dog and it wants to strike everything, So you already know that it's going to strike. So you don't have to worry about that part. So that's why I don't like roading those type of dogs. The young ones that are wanting to run everything they smell. I like to set them up on whatever game I'm wanting to pursue, which I run gray fox. So I want to put them on a whole bunch of gray fox. So I wait till my old dogs get a fox truck, which it should be a fox. Sometimes they're screwed up too, but most of the time it should be a fox. And so then I put them out there, and then I know they're on a fox scent. And so I do that and get them on, 15, 20, 30 fox, depending on how long the dog takes. And once it's figured out that fox smell and knows that's the smell that it's after, then I can put them in the road and start roading them and try to, most time they break themselves. But then if they do run some off game, you could bump them with the collar and they kind of put it together pretty fast. Like that.
So do you kind of like... when you're putting them out, the dogs that are more focused and not like it, the best I've heard it is an automatic rig dog. Like smells something, boop, there it is. It doesn't have time to process that's a fox, that's a cat, that's a bear. Like they don't care at that point.
Yeah.
Because if you put that on the ground, do you feel like if you're letting them kind of mess with it a little, even when you call them back, you're not like progressing? It's just teaching them to kind of stay closer.
I want my dogs to go out there and try to find a track. So I don't want to discourage them from striking in any way, shape, or form. So I already know they're going to strike. So I'm not worried about that at this point. The ones that are not striking and not wanting to run everything they come across, then I'll just keep roading those and kind of let them figure it out. But as soon as they start striking everything under the sun, that's when I quit rodent. Mm-hmm. So that I don't want them to get discouraged of striking a track. So I don't want to correct them at this point. So I want to get them, like I said, on 15, 20 good pieces of game. And that way they know what they're looking for when I put them in the road. But yeah, it's not, I've seen it, a bunch of times. I've done it myself, that you get a dog that's striking at a young age and you go to breaking them before you go to hunting them, then, you're not going to have a very good strike dog, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to be nervous about striking anything, because every time they do, they get shocked.
Right. You want to, it's like that magic point between just starting and like you are going to probably run anything that's leaving a track right now. Like just gamey, ready to go.
Yeah. I've had some dogs before that weren't very gamey, but a lot of the ones I've been raising lately are really gamey. Like they have no problem going with dogs. And I've already had them, buddied up with the other dogs. They've been kenneled with them. They know them. So going is not a problem. Mm-hmm. So I'm not worried about that part with my pups. I'm just worried about getting them in the right direction. So, like I said, I'd like take them to trees. Jump out races, I think, are great. Tie all the dogs back, matter of fact. And I got a 40-foot jump out pole with a bell on the end. I shake it around. The fox hears that, he'll come out of the tree, and I could put them pups on a red hot fox. Right. And normally they don't run as far, a jump out, so they'll go 300, 400, 500 yards in tree. And then I'll do that, 2 or 3 times with that fox. If I can see the fox is kind of getting shorter trees and get tired, I don't want him to catch it. So I just, I'll quit messing with that one. Sure. But, you do that and get them really tuned up on what you're wanting them to run. I think a lot of guys are wanting their dog to strike, run, and tree, and do all that stuff before they ever know what they're after.
No foundation, really.
Yeah.
What about?
I was listening to a podcast today with a guy that trains the protection dog, the Ewing, and just like he was talking about what he does with his, with the bomb training, he lets them smell that scent over and over and over and over. So I think that's kind of the same thing.
We got so much feedback on that one too, like a lot more than I was even expecting.
Yeah,
that was
a good one.
It's all about the foundations. Because that's.
And I was thinking that's kind of the same thing, that we do.
Yeah. So what about, like you said, the dogs now you have the puppies are real gamey, but what about, like, I'm sure you've had one in the past that didn't really want to go off the bat, and you got to kind of approach that a little different. Like you can't make them go. They have to want to go. Sure. What would you do for like somebody in that situation where they got a pup that's just not real eager to get in on the action?
So like I said earlier in the last podcast, I like to buddy them up with somebody. So that's their friend. And then they'll normally follow that one. But even if they're not doing that, then I'll try to trigger their prey drive. I do that I got a big, deep sea fishing pole, and I'll put a bunch of fox scent on a fox hide or whatever. And I'll get them just chasing that around in a circle around the yard. I even do that when they're a little younger, just depending on the pup, Ones that are not as high strung or not as gamey, I do it with. But the ones that are kind of gamey and a little crazy already, I don't want to do that with them because it makes them a little rattlehead, I think. Sure. But once you get them chasing that around, it kind of triggers their prey drive. And then they learn, that they smell that scent and they learn they're chasing it. And the thing I like to do is never let them have it. Make them always want it, because it's hard to train a dog on a dead piece of game on a hide or anything like that. So you got to simulate it being as live as much as possible. So never let them grab it, chew on it, because then they're going to realize it's not live, and then they're not going to be as apt to chase it.
That makes sense.
But it takes sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 times to get them to chase it, or you get another dog out there with them and they see that dog chasing the hide around, and they'll normally start, eventually.
Right on.
And then some, obviously just never got it. They just don't have the prey drive. But
so how do you exit that situation? Like if somebody's working with a flirt pole or something like that, you say never let them catch it. And I know I've seen a ton of guys, like they do let them catch it after time, like as a reward. But I get the concept behind it. But how do you remove that? Like you obviously aren't going to discourage them from chasing it so you can get away.
Yeah. So I'll just take the pole and run it up a tree. and the dog will either tree on it or lose interest. When it loses interest, I'll tie the dog back. It can't get a hold of it because it hides up the tree. So I'll tie the pup up, and then I'll run away with the hide and make it bark and watch it leave. And then it's just, it's gone. And then I'll take the pup and put it away. But I like to do it like maybe 15 minutes or so. I don't want to get them bored of it. So once I want to leave them on a good note. So I want them wanting it when I put the hide away.
So when they're barking at it up the tree, what do you do then? Just take the dog away from the situation?
Yeah, just take the dog away and drag them away. Don't, encourage them to, come on or jerk on them or whatever. Just kind of walk away and pull them away and leave them wanting to get back to that tree. Make them wanting.
And I'm sure that like instills a thought process in their head too. Like that's stationary. It's staying here. They're taking me away. So I'm sure that helps with tree instinct too.
Oh, yeah.
Sticking.
Yeah, it definitely helps. And like I said, they're all different. Some of them you got to do that 2 or 3 times. They, the first time they might not do it.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to, whatever triggers them. They might not be mature enough.
Right. Age is
some dogs take. Yeah. Some are ready at 5, 6 months old. Some are ready year old. Just depends on the pup.
Right.
Some of them will chase that hide at 8 weeks old. Some don't care a world about it.
Right.
But to me, that doesn't mean anything to me really. Sometimes I've had the ones that start really fast, turn out to be the lesser dog, or the ones that were kind of slow starters.
The plateau. Like everyone I've had, those early starter, it's like rocket ship. We're making progress, and then flatline. They just never seem to move past a certain level. Like they quit learning.
Yeah, that does happen a lot.
It's weird. Like I have a lot of conversations about that. And I think back to like one particular dog that was like, man, at 6 months old, cold trailing out in front of finished dogs. I mean, like just kind of a freak. And then boom, it was over. And I couldn't figure out how to get him past it. Honestly, I sold the dog and I just couldn't figure it out. I didn't have any tricks in my arsenal for that. But that's the beauty of these podcasts, man. Now there's like 500 episodes out there and like different training methods and whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome because everybody can kind of pick through them all and get what works for them the best,
Right. Well, so like let's say, okay, we've done our work with a dog that didn't really want to show interest, and that seems like something anybody can do. Fishing pole, PVC pipe, whatever. We sell scent. Yeah. If you need some, it's pretty realistic. I mean, enough all those field trials are running it. So
yeah,
I'd say 99% of the field trials on the West Coast are all running our scent. So it must work a little bit at least.
Yeah, they'll definitely taste it. I don't know if it's 100% like the real animal, but
right, close enough to get an idea.
As close as you're going to get,
So let's say they're going. We've got them to that point. They're running with the dogs, whether they're just trailing butts or trailing game. A lot of people talk about the mouth on a dog and how they run a track. And I know we've covered that with track style 100 times when we've talked. But the importance for you, I know, is going to be different than, like, let's say some of the bear hunters. They like a real open mouth on track, no matter where they're at in the race. Where the small game, it's way different because these dogs are pretty much, it's desirable if they honor a dog. You just have to have the dogs there that they can honor and it's worthwhile. But so if you get a young dog that's barking out of place, those front dogs make one bobble and they hear a puppy back there just yacht, 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 yacht. They're going to circle back and check it out if they made a lose, right? I mean, most of the time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. A dog that's been on a lot of box will, for sure. I think that dog has a track and it's going to go to it.
It's shortcutting.
Yeah.
So how do you go about trying to keep that mouth quiet on a pup without discouraging? Because that's 100% like raw first race out, they're opening up. It's like, you haven't trained a bit of that. And if it's wide open, you don't want to discourage it, but you got to kind of curb it to a point too.
Yeah. So at this point, you should already know what your dog's tolerance is for the shock collar. Like we talked about before, some of them you can just barely vibrate them and that's all it takes. Some you got to hit harder. So you should know that at this point. So what I like to do is when my dog is opening out of place, barking out of place, I'll bump them with that collar But like I said, I already know their number. I know what it takes to get them to stop doing what they're doing. So I turn it down a few numbers from that. I just want enough just to get their attention. Like, hey, pay attention here, and then they'll kind of shut up. Like, what was that? And then they hear the other dogs barking.
Forget it. I'm back in.
Yeah. But you don't want to shock them enough to where they're going to quit. So that's why you got to know your dog and know what it's going to handle,
Yeah.
See, which you should know all that from working on. Yeah, vibrate works good on that, but some of them, they don't even phase them.
Right.
So it just depends. A lot of mine, I could just vibrate with something like that, and that's all it needs. Some of them, you got to shock them a little bit.
Mm-hmm. But know your dog, like you're saying. I mean, that's where you have to do your homework.
Yeah, all that should have been done, before you ever started hunting them. You should know, the dog should have a good recall. You should know what it takes to get it to come to you.
And I get that question all the time. Why do they have a vibrate on these things? And I thought the same thing in the beginning. But I'll tell you what, because I tone train mine for a recall and I use stimulation for correction. That vibrate, like as soon as I started using it, that is the one time I use it as a dog barking out of place. And it is, I mean, that's worked for me. I don't know if it's going to work for everybody, but that's kind of a little trick, like super secret hack that a hound guy kind of overlooked for a long time. And when I started using it, man, it was like 100% made a difference in those dogs without cutting their confidence or their drive.
Yeah, I love the vibrate. I use it all the time. Even like say there's a bone or deer leg or something in the road that they find and they go to chew on it. You just vibrate them. Normally they'll just quit and leave it alone and go on. Mm-hmm. Don't even bother them,
Yeah.
And like I said, that's my first step is to vibrate. If that don't work, then I turn it up. But I said all dogs are different. If I know the dog, like Cruz, the pup I got out of Finn and Bubbles, he's hard headed. You got to give him some juice. Vibrate, he don't even know it vibrated. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, but most of the other ones, that's all it takes.
I mean, what about like the race itself, though? I mean, how much influence do you feel you put into that race with a young dog, or are you just observing, watching them, and seeing? I mean, like, luckily, small game road crossings are pretty regular. Like, you get to see a lot of action, and you can see where those dogs are coming across. I mean, do you just kind of kick back at that point, or do you help them out when they come to a road crossing and they're behind?
No, I like to let them figure it out on their own. So if they're going to go across the road, I like to be out of that area.
Yeah.
That way, when they come across the road, the young dogs don't see me and try to come to me. That way, I'm not there. They can come across the road and they can work and figure it out. And normally, one of the older dogs or even sometimes the young dogs will figure it out. And then once one barks off the road, they honor really well. And they'll all just get across the road. Some fox, I'm sure you've seen it too. They'll hit the road and run straight down the road.
Oh yeah.
Those ones are tough. You got to have a dog that knows they do that. Otherwise, it just blows the whole race up.
Yeah, it's funny because they learn. Like, I know we got a couple here that they'll come down and hit the roads, and when the dogs go in the road, they default to running one direction, turning around, running the other direction, and then coming right back and bouncing off the road. Like, they've figured out that some of those are road runners, and those are the worst too, because they don't leave scent. It's easy to throw a pup. And when they do bail, those dogs are usually doing, 10, 12 miles an hour or whatever, full out running down the road. And they're trying to make a U-turn, trying to get back on a fox track. It's tough on a young dog for sure.
Yeah. Another thing that roads do that is real tough to me is a fox that trees right on the road. So them dogs come running into the road. Well, they think that fox either ran up and down the road or went across it. And that, that's a really hard spot for a dog to locate because they're not thinking it went up.
Yeah.
They're going up and down the road and, trying to find it. Normally they'll figure it out, but to me that they take a little bit longer when they tree right on the road.
Yeah.
And they do that quite often.
Yeah.
I think they know almost, I wonder how many's got away that's treed next to the road and the dogs just couldn't figure out where it went. And, it got away, came down late after you picked the dogs up or whatever.
Oh, they learned.
Oh, yeah.
Now, to your fox, I'm going to side note here a little bit because we're talking about that and like locating. That's a rough situation, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or there's just certain situations that make it harder on those dogs to locate. When you're in that situation, do you totally let them figure it out on their own, or do you start looking and get them whooped up on it, get them going?
I'll give them a little bit of time and, let them. Yeah, I can almost tell if when it went up by just watching the GPS, but they'll start making loops and trying to find the track. If they don't find the track pretty soon out of there, as long as they're still looking and kind of circling around trying to find that tree or find the track, I kind of let them go. As soon as they start going on their back track or whatever, then I'll try to go in there and call them back over there and try to find the fox for them. But normally that's with young dogs. I got a few pretty good locators now, so normally I don't have to do that. But when I was first starting these ones out, I had to go in there and find quite a few for them.
That's always.
But I try to, when they make a lose, I try to mark that area. And if they go on, then I can unmark it or whatever. But if they don't, and I know they were running hard, and I'm pretty sure the fox went up, I'll go in there and try to find it for them, and then encourage them to tree a little bit, and then try to jump it out and run it again.
Yeah. So do you encourage a pup quite a bit at the tree?
No, just enough to let them know that it went up right there, and then I quit. I want them to learn to tree on their own. I don't want them to be slick trees at all. So I want them to figure it out on their own. But sometimes if they can't locate it, obviously they don't know where it went. Right. So I would just kind of show them what tree it's in, and I'd leave it at that. I don't go too crazy.
Well, and I'd take that as kind of an opportunity for you to do more homework too. Like, dog got in on a race. Like, obviously it's ran the race. It did the majority of the job, except for the last 10%. The locate is what seals the deal, but it's such a small piece of what they have to do in the big scheme. Something like that where they might not show a whole lot of interest. I mean, that's the night I would be home working that flirt pole, the next day while it's fresh in their mind, and messing with them and taking that opportunity because they put so much together. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it depends on the dog. If your dog's not treating real well, and there's a difference between a dog that's a good tree dog and a dog that's a good locator.
Yeah,
like that bird dog I have, she's been a hammer tree dog since she was a little pup, but she didn't make a good locator until she was almost 2 years old.
So define that, because we've got a lot of novice houndsmen. What's the big difference? Because locate and tree are two totally different words with two totally different meanings. And I feel like they get lumped together a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to start with the locate dog, so they got to figure that out first. So locate is when the animal goes up a tree, whether, it's jumped into the tree or climbed up there from the bottom. The dog has to figure out what tree it went in. And then they'll, on a fox or a bobcat, they'll normally have to make a few loops around the tree like they made a lose, and then they'll figure out that it went up and locate. But that is a very hard thing to teach a dog to do, and it's very hard to get one that does it, especially with these running dogs. That's their weakest link, because they're not very good locators. But once they figure it out, they normally are really accurate. But it takes them, they're not bred to do that. So it takes them a little bit, longer to figure that out.
And it's not a guessing game. I mean, like when those dogs are locating, they're not even like, it's not a track at that point. They're not just coming to the end of a track and pulling up treed, which I think is the downfall of a ton of dogs out there. It's like, oh, well, it's not leaving here, so it must be here. That's different than a dog smelling around, not finding an outbound and throwing its head into the wind and locating that animal. They're locating the source of that scent versus by default, we're going to grab a tree, and that's where a lot of slick treeing comes from, I think.
Oh, yeah, because the dogs that are slick treeing are not locating. They just know the track ended, and they go, well, it must have went up.
Grab a tree.
And that's bred into them for these competition hunts. They want dogs that are going to tree fast. I want my dogs to take their time before they tree. I don't care if it takes them 5-10 minutes. Mm-hmm. I want them to know when they set down a tree that it's in there.
And I don't have to walk into a slick, because that is not fun country down there.
No, definitely not. So that's the locate part. The tree dog is, so once a dog locates, so you have one dog that finally locates it, well, they're all just going to go in there and tree with that dog because they've been to, a bunch of trees. They know it's up there, but they didn't know how to figure out what tree it was in. The other dogs showed them what tree it's in. And then now they can smell it. Now they know, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
But they did not locate it. They're just treeing because the other dog showed them where it was at. That's the difference between a dog that trees and a dog that locates.
And that's like the greatest moment in a race, I think. There's like screaming, jumped hot, that thing's running, stinking, dogs are on it, and then there's dead silence. And you just kind of hold your breath for a minute, and you're waiting for that locate. And that is the coolest. To me, that's what gives me goosebumps still. That's what keeps me coming back for more.
Yeah, a lot of dogs will let out one long locate, and then they'll make a couple more loops around,
Yep.
and they might let out another one, couple loops, and then they'll set down and tree.
Yeah, and the dogs that still have that audible changeover. Like I can't remember what episode it was, but he was making fun of me the way I was imitating Henry. But just big, long locate ball. And it just sent chills up my spine, man. I got him right now thinking about it. Now he's passed on, but man, that was the coolest thing about that dog was the locate, just the dead silence. And then out of the depths of the night, you just hear, oh, yo, 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 yo. That was like, that's what kept me in it all the years I wanted to quit, man. That is the key. I think the final piece that comes together for those dogs, the trailin's bred into them, right? Like,
yeah,
that's something that's going to just be there. Now, some are going to do it better. You're going to have better dogs for cold trailing. You're going to have dogs that are better on a jump. They got better style. They know how to cut and use their tools in the ground to their advantage. And they just have a knack for learning that. But man, getting a young dog to where they're finally locating, that's the epitome of what we do. I think that's like all the pieces.
Especially for the running dogs, they're a little bit tougher to get. A tree dog, it does come kind of natural for them to locate because it's bred into them.
Mm-hmm.
These running dogs, it is not natural for them to tree, so it takes a little bit longer. They have to figure that out. To me, I'd say, like I said earlier, that's the only downfall I see in the running dogs. And they most of the ones I've had will tree and locate. I have very few that I never could get to, but they might be a year and a half, even 2 years old before they're really good locators. I can get them to tree at a young age, with the pole or with whatever. But I want them to locate a tree on their own without me having to show them what's at. Well, they normally figure it out.
I think that's a big thing, like, because the running dogs all of a sudden like have blown up. I mean, they're a big topic of conversation. There's a lot of guys switching to them or mixes of them. But I feel like there's a lot of standards that are coming over from a totally different style of dog onto that. Like if you're expecting a registered trig dog to tree at 8 months old, yeah, there's some that do it. I know you've seen them that do it. What Beetlejuice was registered trig, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's a registered trig, and he located and treated good.
I mean, monster. I hunted quite a bit with him. I should have bought him when I had the chance, to be real honest with you, Cougar.
Yeah. He's a nice dog for sure.
But he was, a natural tree dog, and some of them just figure it out. I know there's lines of Julys out there that tree a lot harder than some full tree dogs I've seen.
Oh, yeah.
But on the flip side of that, I'd say a lot of them, these guys are getting real discouraged with them by a year old, and they're not blowing down trees. I mean, it's just a different scale. You got to really change your perspective, I think, on a majority of these running style dogs.
Yeah, they're a little different. You have to figure it out. But most of the ones we got now are actually treating really good. None of them locating yet, except for Olive. She's a year and a half old though.
Mm-hmm.
But she's locating really good actually. But most of the ones I got are treeing really good, but none of them's located yet. Yeah. And it's tougher on fox and cat, especially this time of year when it's hot, versus bears. They're going to tree a lot. You don't really have to locate a bear too hard, so they're going to tree a lot sooner and locate a lot better on a bear than a fox or a cat, obviously.
Yeah. So what do you do? I mean, with that young dog, it's gone through the race. I mean, it's made the tree. Whatever happens, happened. It either blew it down, you jumped it out, you made some use of that time to work with it. What do you do when you're putting them away? I mean, do you treat them any different? Because I've heard a lot of guys, they'll give them treats or they'll do this if they do something right. Like after a race when they get to the truck, they got something waiting for them. Or like, is there a routine you have? Or do you just treat them like they are just part of the pack?
No, I just, pet them real good and be real friendly with them, let them know they're doing good, but I don't give them any treats or anything like that. I've often thought about it. I just never done it, but yeah, I'm hunting 10 dogs, it's hard to
milk bone, buy stocks right now.
Yeah, you're going to have a big old mess trying to give them a treat. But one thing I like to do at the tree with a young dog like that, so you got one there that's not treeing, made the whole race, but it's lost interest, it's milling around. So I'll get that dog and I'll tie it up at the tree, but I don't want to tie it right at the tree where all the other dogs are. I want to tie it back a little ways to where it can see them other dogs and it wants to be there with them. And it's pissed off because it's back there, 50 yards or so, and it's wondering why it's not up in there.
Mm-hmm.
You do that a few times, and pretty soon they'll stay at the tree because they're like, if I leave, then I'm going to be tied back over here.
Yeah.
And same with they come back to the truck. I'll put them back in the truck and let them listen to them other dogs run. And they'll have their head out of the box or whatever wanting to go. And I'm sorry, you shouldn't have came back. And,
yeah, right? Like you missed your chance.
Yeah.
What about if you get a dog, like a young dog like that? A lot of times I've seen they'll just be super loose. Like they'll go check out the tree, but before you walk in and get that chance to like call them to it, obviously you're going to call them in. You're going to try to show them and do the same thing every hound guy does where you hold the dog's head and you try to make them see it. Like we've all done that and it never works, right? Like, yeah. But what about if before you get there? I'm thinking back to like Rose and Fancy. They'd get in there, fox and tree, and then they'd start making circles because they're looking for that outbound, even with other dogs sitting there hammering. I approached it as I would tone them. They didn't know where I was, but they know it's a form of recall and all their buddies are over here. So that groundwork I put in with tone and recall, I used that to get them to pull back to the tree. And then once I was there and able to work with them a little bit, I'd call them, if they went away, it was a verbal command. But do you do anything before you get there, or you just kind of let them wander around and try to figure it out?
No, I basically do the same thing, but I don't use the tone. I vibrate or I'll, sure, stimulate them a little bit depending on, the dogs. Like I said, I already know the dog, know what it takes, and enough to get us to the tree. But if it keeps on doing that, once I get to the tree and that dog is still milling around and leaving the tree and it's going out there a little ways, I'll turn that collar up a little bit more and I'll let it know that, hey, you're supposed to be here at this tree, and I'll bump it pretty hard and make it come there. Then that's when I'll tie it back and like, you got to stay here.
Yeah.
I don't let them just go as they want, but I don't like doing that if I'm not at the tree, because if I'm going to hit them pretty hard, I want them to come to me and me be there and be like, oh, I'm here, I'm doing good, and then tie them back and say, okay. And I try not to pay too much attention to them, but I want them to know that I'm there and you need to be where the dogs are.
Where I am. Yeah.
Because you hit them too hard and they kind of get a little scared, they might end up going back to the truck. So I want to be able to call them if they do start going back to the truck, and make sure I get them coming to the tree and not to the truck or back. Sure. If I have to bump them that hard, if the tone and the vibrate and the low stimulation is not working, then I got to rein them in a little bit.
So what about like you get back from a hunt, successful hunt, right? They're all at the tree. You've got to run through all this. How long before you take that dog back to the woods again? I mean, as soon as possible.
I like to go as soon as possible.
Like next night?
Yeah, I try to go, 3 or 4 or 5 nights a week normally.
Yeah.
So, and that's the fastest way to do it. I know a lot of guys can't do that, but, at least on the weekends or a couple nights a week, at least, bare minimum. It's hard to train a dog to be top notch, only hunting a couple days a week. It takes that much more work, because then by the time, you got to kind of refresh their memory a little bit because you haven't done nothing with them all week, since the last Sunday, the last time you hunted them or whatever it was.
It's tough.
So it takes a little bit longer, but when it's fresh in their mind, you can go again the next night, then they start putting stuff together really fast. The more time in the woods is definitely the best, but I know it's hard to do.
Yeah. You ever worry about them wearing down like that young? Because they're still developing. I mean, we're not talking puppies, but I'm assuming in my mind, we're talking about a 7-month-old to 16-month-old young dog. I mean, it's kind of what I'm thinking we're talking about here.
Yeah, definitely worry about them wearing down. But that's why I said I don't hardly ever put them on the initial race at first, because I'll take them to the tree, jump outs, stuff like that. Or if I did get them on a long, hard race, I maybe just take them to the tree the next night. Mm-hmm. So I like starting them a little bit slower because I don't want to discourage them and get them wore out or tired, or then they're like, man, this ain't fun. Right. I'm sore and I'm beat up, and I don't want that. I want them to leave on a good note and want to go.
Buddy used an analogy the other day. It was like the rat effect or something, where like if you put a rat in a bucket of water, it'll drown in 5 minutes. But if you pull it out right as it's drowning and you dry it off and you get it breathing, it's back to calm. And you put him back in there, he'll swim for days because he's just got hope to hold on.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I guess.
Oh.
And another thing I like to do at the tree, kind of should have said this earlier, but when I'm leaving the tree, I want to lead, especially the pups, I want to leash them up and lead them away from the tree. Of course they'll come with me. They all handle good. They recall, but I want them to leave them wanting to stay there. Leave them wanting. I want to drag them away, and I don't want to call them. I just want to pull them away at least 100 yards or so. Then I can let them loose and call them to me and have them come with me. Especially the pups. That I try to do it even with the old dogs, but especially the pups. I want to leave them wanting to be at that tree. And I kind of learned that the hard way because I was calling them all off the tree, and pretty soon I got to where I just start walking away, even just looking for the fox. They just follow me.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, you're just sit over there. And Eddie and I are actually talking about it, and he said that's what he does, and I've been doing that with mine ever since, and it made a big difference.
It doesn't seem like a big thing to some people. It's awesome being able to walk out and just, hey, come on, and they're following you, but I will tell you, when you're hiking into a tree and you're 300 yards away and your fat butt slips on something and cracks a stick and your dog's all pulled tree, it does make you reconsider doing something different. Luckily, these fox will sit up there. They aren't bailing on us, but like a big game hunter, that would never fly.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I agree there. I think, it's great to be able to call them off, but on the second note there, you don't want to be able to call them up so easy to where they're going to hear you coming and come to you.
Yeah, have the ability, but don't always use it.
You can't use it every time because, I was hardly ever, killing anything. I'd jump one out here and there, and then I was just calling them all off, 4 or 5 nights a week. Well, it don't take long. They learn, all right, it's time to go. Yeah, he's here now. Let's go.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. Well, in your trip recently, you just went down and hunted with, you said Gabe came up too?
Yeah.
And he's running some of this stock now too, right?
Yeah,
he has kind of going back and forth.
He has 2 pups out of Cotton. He has one out of Cotton and Kate, and one out of Lola and Cotton. Actually, he has 2 out of Cotton and Kate, but one was at home and he. And then he's got Kate herself. So yeah, he's got pretty much the same string of dogs. We had 6 puppies at the tree out of Cotton there the other day. A granddaughter to Cotton and a niece and a nephew to Cotton. That's a tree the other day. All under a year old.
That's cool. Are you seeing much difference between them? Obviously you guys all handle dogs a little differently, but are you seeing some of those instincts coming through the locate at all in any of their pups?
No, the only one that I've seen locate, and she's a little older, is Olive. They're all treeing pretty good. I haven't had any of them out locate the older dogs yet, but I've had, especially the Cotton and Kate pups, they're really good strike dogs. They're wanting to strike anything. They're like the dogs I talked about earlier. You can't really turn them loose because they're going to strike the first thing they come across.
Sure.
And then the ones out of Bird and Cotton are doing really well also. They'll strike stuff too, but not quite as much as those other ones, but they're really fast. They're hard to throw out of a race. They stay right up in there, and they're almost 10 months old now. Nice. But they're super nice pups. Everybody that has them just loves them. I've got so many comments and people, put me on the list. If you breed them again, I want more of these. Yeah, Brad has one out of each litter. His are doing outstanding for him over there. Brock still has one. He said his is doing great on bears in Idaho. They're all doing a really good job. Well, awesome. We had a bunch of young pups coming up that are real strong. And we just have a litter out of Penny, the female that Eddie got from me, and Rowdy. Rowdy's a super nice fox dog too. He's real fast. And so we got those pups coming. So we're going to have more pups we're not
more to play with.
they're all doing good. It's hard to cull through them. We're just going to keep hunting them, and hopefully we keep them all. If they're all turning out that good, that's not a bad problem to have, right?
No, that's a great problem. Well, we'll have to do this again, man. I'm thinking next one we should probably talk about fixing dogs. I mean, because once they're going, that's great, but that's kind of the beginning of the end right there. They're going to do something stupid. I don't care what dog it is. Every dog I've ever owned, they will start doing some weird stuff, and you got to really scratch your brain or have a good group of friends you can bounce things off of.
Oh, for sure.
Like old dogs. I mean, just stupid old dog stuff, pulling up slick treed when they've never slick treed and doing weird stuff like that. I feel like there's a lot we could cover on that too.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of little things that we have advantage of correcting with the GPS other than we didn't, with the old telemetry collars and stuff. Like, that's a really good tool to have when you're trying to keep a dog in a race and correct it from doing this or doing that.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get together again soon, man. Thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime.